Esther was a young woman, just 24 years old. She sold food in a small wooden shop by the roadside in Lagos. Her stall was made of old wooden planks and rusty iron sheets. It stood under a wide tree where many people came to rest and eat. Esther didn't have much. Her slippers had holes, and her gown was patched in several places, yet she wore a smile every single day. Even when her body ached from stress, she welcomed people with warmth. "Good afternoon, sir, you're welcome," she would say to every customer, no matter how tired she felt. Each morning before the sun rose, she was up and busy, cooking rice, beans, and yam porridge in big pots over firewood. Her hands moved with speed, but inside, her heart was often heavy. She was alone in the world. Her parents had died when she was just a child. She lived in a small room behind the market, with no electricity, no clean water, just her cooking pots, and her dreams. One afternoon, while wiping her wooden bench, her friend Mama Titi walked by with a basket of vegetables. "Esther," Mama Titi called out, "why do you keep smiling when life is hard for you too?" Esther let out a small laugh and replied, "Because frowning won't fill my cooking pot." Mama Titi laughed and kept walking, but her words echoed in Esther's mind. It was true, she didn't have much. Yet she still gave out food to those who couldn't pay. She didn't know her life was about to change forever. Every afternoon, something unusual happened at Esther's shop. A crippled beggar would appear from the dusty corner of the road. He always came alone, slowly pushing his squeaky old wheelchair with calloused hands. The wheels creaked loudly over the stones, creak, creak, creak. People walking by would wrinkle their noses or giggle rudely. "This dirty man again," a boy once said, holding his nose. The man's legs were covered in old bandages. His shorts were torn at the knees. His face was dusty, and his tired eyes seemed to hold stories of pain. Some said he smelled. Others whispered that he was crazy. But Esther never turned her face away. She called him Papa J. That day, as the heat pressed down from above, Papa J arrived and stopped by her stall. Esther looked at him with concern. "You're here again, Papa J. You didn't eat anything yesterday." Papa J dropped his eyes. His voice was barely a whisper. "I was too weak to move," he said. "I haven't eaten in 2 days." Esther looked at her food table. Only one plate of beans and yam remained, the same food she planned to eat for herself. She paused and took a breath. Then she quietly lifted the plate and placed it before him. "Here, eat," she said gently. Papa J looked at the meal, then up at her. "You're giving me your last plate again?" he asked. Esther nodded. "I can always cook more when I get home." His hands trembled as he held the spoon. His eyes were full, but no tears dropped. He simply bowed his head and began to eat slowly. People nearby watched curiously. "Esther, why do you always give that man food?" one woman asked. Esther looked up and replied calmly, "If I were the one in that wheelchair, wouldn't I pray for someone to show me mercy too?" Papa J came every single day, but he never begged. He didn't shout at people. He didn't extend his hand for coins. He didn't even look up. He just sat there quietly in his rusty wheelchair beside Esther's small wooden shop. His head always bowed. His hands resting still. His wheelchair looked like it had seen many hard years, one wheel even leaned dangerously to the side. While others walked past him like he was invisible, Esther always made sure he ate. Sometimes she gave him rice. Other times beans and yam. And always with a big, warm smile. One hot afternoon, Esther had just finished serving jollof rice to 2 boys in school uniforms. She looked up and saw Papa J once more, sitting in his usual spot. His legs were still wrapped in those old, brown bandages. His shirt now had even more holes, but like always, he sat silently. Esther smiled to herself, scooped a hot plate of jollof rice, added 2 small chunks of meat, and walked over to him. "Papa J," she said softly, "your food is ready." He looked up slowly. His eyes were weary, but they softened when he saw her. "You never forget me," he said quietly. Esther knelt and placed the food gently on the stool next to him. "Even if the whole world forgets you," she whispered, "I won't." Just as she stood up, a black SUV pulled up and stopped right in front of her stall. The tinted door opened, and a man stepped out. He wore a sparkling white shirt tucked into black trousers. His polished shoes reflected the afternoon sun. He was tall, confident, and had sharp, intense eyes. Esther quickly wiped her hands on her apron. "Good afternoon, sir," she greeted with a bow. "Good afternoon," the man replied. But he wasn't looking at her. His eyes were locked on Papa J. On the 4th day, just as she was slicing onions, a familiar sound interrupted her morning routine: a car. A sleek black SUV rolled to a slow stop in front of her stall. Esther stood up, squinting against the sun. A tall man stepped out, wearing a bright red cap and fine clothes that looked expensive. He didn't smile. He didn't even greet her. He simply walked up to her stall and handed her a brown envelope. Esther stared, confused. What is this?" she asked, taking the envelope with both hands. The man didn't answer. "Just read it. Don't tell anyone," he said coldly. Then he turned and walked back to the car. In seconds, it was gone. Esther looked left, then right. Nobody had seen anything. Her fingers trembled as she opened the envelope. Inside was a single white sheet. Her eyes scanned the short message: "Come to Green Hill Hotel by 4 p.m. Don't tell anyone," from a friend. Her lips parted slightly. "Green Hill Hotel," she murmured. "I've never even been to a hotel." She read the paper again, this time slower. Her heart pounded. Who sent this? What kind of friend? She clutched the paper to her chest and looked toward the sky. Clouds were forming, but she knew something deep inside her: she had to go. By 3:30 p.m., Esther stood in front of her wooden shop holding the lock in her hand. She glanced at her pots, her bench, her table. Then she closed the stall door and turned the key twice. "God, please go with me," she whispered under her breath. She waved down a passing tricycle and climbed in. "Green Hill Hotel," she told the driver. As they moved through the noisy streets of Lagos, Esther held the brown envelope tightly. Her mind was spinning. Who sent the letter? What did they want with her? The city buzzed with life around her, but she was lost in her own world of questions. After a while, the tricycle stopped in front of a tall hotel building. Esther looked up in awe. The hotel stood like a palace: glass windows, flower beds, sparkling walls. The front doors gleamed like gold. 2 security guards stood at the gate. One of them, wearing dark glasses, stepped forward. "Good afternoon, madam," he said. "Who are you here to see?" Esther opened her mouth slowly. I got this letter," she said, holding out the paper. "It says I should come here. My name is Esther." The guard took the paper, read it, and nodded. "Someone is waiting for you inside," he said. "You can go in." Just then, a man in a black suit appeared at the door and walked toward her. He didn't smile. He simply said, "Come with me, please," and turned around. Esther followed him nervously. Her legs felt heavy, but she didn't stop. They walked down a long hallway with soft lights and shiny tiles. Then the man stopped in front of a tall brown door. He looked at her and said, "Someone is waiting for you inside." Esther's heartbeat quickened. She looked at the door, then at the man. "Can I go in now?" she asked. He nodded once. Yes. You're safe. Esther took a deep breath and pushed the door open. Her eyes widened. In the middle of the room sat a man in a wheelchair. Her feet froze. Her mouth opened slightly. "Papa J," she whispered, holding her chest. But this man, he didn't look like the Papa J she knew. His hair was neat. His skin looked fresh. He wore a white shirt with gold buttons and a fine wristwatch. The wheelchair was different, new, clean, polished. He didn't look tired. He looked calm, confident. And then he smiled. "Esther," he said gently, "come in." Esther stepped inside slowly. "Papa J, is it really you?" The man looked into her eyes. "Yes, Esther. It's me." He pointed at the chair across from him. "Please, sit." Esther sat down carefully, still staring at him like she was seeing a ghost. "My name is not Papa J," he said. "My real name is Chief George. I am a billionaire." Esther's mouth dropped open. "A billionaire," she whispered. Chief George nodded. "Yes. I own companies, schools, buildings, businesses. But I got tired of people pretending to be kind only when others are watching. So I disguised myself as a beggar to find someone real." Esther's eyes were wet now. "But, why me?" Chief George gave her a gentle smile. "Because you gave without expecting anything in return. You never asked me for help. You didn't laugh at me. You didn't walk away. You gave with a pure heart." He leaned forward slightly. "Every year, I choose 10 people with true kindness and bless them beyond their imagination. Today, you are one of those 10. Esther gasped. Her heart was racing. Chief George paused. Then, slowly, he placed both hands on the armrests and stood up. Esther's hands flew to her mouth. You can walk?" she asked in shock. Chief George nodded. "Yes, Esther. I've been able to walk the whole time." "Then why sit in a wheelchair?" she asked. He looked into her eyes. "Because I wanted to see who would care for me even when I looked like I had nothing." Esther's lips trembled. "I didn't do it for anything," she said quietly. "I just thought, he must be hungry and alone." Chief George smiled again. "That's exactly why I chose you." He looked at her with warmth. "Esther, follow me. There is something I want to show you." Esther blinked in surprise. "Something else?" "Yes," he replied. "It's part of your reward." She stood up slowly and followed him toward the door. Esther followed Chief George out of the quiet hotel room, her heart pounding faster than her footsteps. Outside the door, 2 well-dressed men in black suits were already waiting. They nodded respectfully at Chief George and turned to lead the way. Esther kept looking around. Everything still felt like a dream, like a scene from a movie she wasn't sure she belonged in. As they stepped out of the hotel, her eyes widened. 5 large, black SUVs were lined up in the parking lot, shiny like mirrors. Big men stood beside each one, looking sharp and serious. Chief George walked straight to the first car, and the door swung open for him. Then he turned and looked at her with a smile. "Come in, Esther," he said. Her hands trembled as she stepped into the car and sat beside him. The door closed gently, and the other 4 vehicles followed behind like a royal convoy. The city blurred past her as the cars moved slowly through the streets of Lagos. People walked on the sidewalks, buses honked, sellers shouted, but inside the SUV, there was only silence and questions. Esther kept glancing at Chief George, then out the window, her fingers still holding the brown envelope in her lap. She wanted to ask where they were going, but her voice felt stuck in her throat. After almost 30 minutes, the vehicles turned onto a cleaner, quieter road. The buildings here looked fresh, colorful, and expensive. The air even smelled different, like flowers and new paint. Esther leaned closer to the window. Everything around her looked too beautiful to be real. Then the SUV slowed and stopped. A man quickly opened Chief George's door, then hers. Esther stepped out and turned around, and froze. Her eyes opened wide, her lips parted. Right in front of her stood a grand, tall, breathtaking building. It looked like something out of a magazine. It wasn't just a food place. It was a luxury restaurant, shining glass windows, smooth white walls, gold-trimmed doors, flower beds lined at the entrance. The kind of place only the rich would ever enter. But that wasn't what shocked her the most. The sign above the building read, Esther's Place, Home of Sweet Meals. Esther staggered back a little. She looked again, just to be sure her eyes weren't lying. Is this real?" she whispered. Chief George nodded with pride. "Yes, Esther. It's yours. Mine." Her voice came out like a breath. He reached into his pocket, brought out a bunch of keys, and stretched them towards her. "This place belongs to you now. Go inside." Esther collected the keys slowly, her hands shaking. Step by step, she walked to the golden door. She turned the key, opened it, and gasped. Inside, everything sparkled like diamonds. The floors shone like glass. The chairs were soft and rich with velvet. The tables glistened with golden edges. Beautiful lights hung from the ceiling, twinkling like stars. The air smelled like vanilla and fresh lemon. Behind the restaurant was a massive kitchen, spotless, modern, and fully equipped. There were shiny gas cookers, clean pots, deep freezers, big fridges, and even brand new uniforms for the workers. Esther covered her mouth with both hands. She turned slowly, her eyes filled with tears. "You bought all of this, for me?" she asked in disbelief. Chief George walked in and stood beside her. "Yes," he said gently. "You gave me food from your small shop, with your small money, and a big heart. Now I want to give you a place where kings and queens will come to eat. You will never suffer again, Esther." Esther fell to her knees. Her tears fell freely, but they were tears of joy. "I don't even have words to say," she sobbed. "You don't need to say anything," Chief George replied. "Your kindness already spoke for you." From that day forward, Esther's life completely changed. She became the proud owner of one of the finest restaurants in Lagos. It was not like her old roadside stall anymore. It was elegant, grand, and peaceful. She didn't cook anymore. She didn't serve customers. Professional chefs now worked in the kitchen, dressed in white coats and tall hats. Waiters in neat uniforms smiled as they moved from table to table. Esther had her own office upstairs. Her name was written in gold on the door. Her picture was framed on the wall. And everyone who worked there respected her deeply. But Esther never forgot where she came from. She never forgot Papa J. And she never forgot how kindness opened the door to her destiny. One bright morning, her manager walked into her office and said, "Madam, the food truck is ready." Esther stood up and smiled softly. "Let's go," she said. Outside, a big white van was waiting. On the side of the van were bold words, "Esther's Food Love, Feeding the Hungry." Esther had started a charity foundation. Every week, her food trucks drove around the city, under bridges, beside markets, near hospitals, in slum areas, and gave free food to poor people. People lined up in joy. Some wore torn clothes. Some were old. Some were barefoot children. Esther walked among them, smiling, handing them warm food with her own hands. "Eat well," she would say. "You're not forgotten." One of her workers turned to her and asked, "Madam, why do you do all this?" Esther looked at him and placed her hand over her heart. "Kindness brought me here," she said softly. "So I must send kindness back out into the world." The worker nodded quietly. As the team watched people eat and smile, the sun slowly rose in the sky and cast a soft glow on Esther's face. She looked up and whispered, "Thank you, Chief George. Thank you for seeing me." Then she turned, climbed back into the food van, and rode off to feed the next street. Her life had changed forever, but her heart remained the same. Moral of the story: kindness is never wasted. You may not have much, but when you give from a pure heart, your reward will find you when you least expect it.